In the beginning of the story, we see two people climbing down a cliff with great difficulty, but during the descent, their feet slip and they both fall. After this intense moment, the story transitions into a flashback where we meet David and his girlfriend Lucy. David is a professional lawyer, and Lucy is a food chemist. They love each other deeply and are about to get married in a few days. Before the big day, they decide to celebrate by going on a holiday to an Arab country. Soon, they arrive at their destination and check into a luxurious hotel. That night, Lucy heads to the dinner table first, while David takes some time to join her. Meanwhile, a man named Ben, sitting at another table, notices Lucy alone and sends over a famous dish from the country to her table. Lucy enjoys the dish and acknowledges Ben. Just as this happens, David arrives, and Ben leaves upon realizing that Lucy isn't alone. David then shares some great news. He has won a big case, which will earn him a lot of money. In celebration, he gifts Lucy a ring and proposes to her. Overjoyed, Lucy happily accepts. The next morning, the couple plans to go for a desert walk, but David receives a call from his office. He is asked to attend an important video conference, which means he can't go on the trip. Lucy becomes furious because David always prioritizes work over their time together. In an attempt to pacify her, David suggests that Lucy go on the trip alone. Angrily, Lucy agrees and leaves for the trip by herself. She gets into her car and notices other tourists heading out for a desert trip as well. Just then, Lucy spots Ben again, and they strike up a conversation. Ben tells her he's going trekking on a famous mountain about 30 miles away, and invites her to join him. Initially, Lucy declines and returns to her car, but she sits there deep in thought. After a while, Lucy makes up her mind and joins Ben on his trek. Ben asks Lucy to drive and tells her that after 10 miles, she'll need to give him some space to sleep as he plans to rest. Lucy agrees but reminds him that she needs to be back at the hotel by 4 p.m. the next day. They set off toward the mountain, driving through the vast desert for hours until they finally arrive. Once there, Lucy is mesmerized by the breathtaking view of the endless desert stretching out in all directions. She feels a sense of exhilaration as they take in the beauty of the landscape. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, David is ready for his online meeting. However, he receives a call informing him that the board members have already made a decision without him, and the meeting is canceled. David feels frustrated, realizing he ruined their vacation for nothing. On the mountain, Ben and Lucy prepare to spend the night. As they chat, Lucy asks Ben what he does for a living. Ben casually replies that he doesn't do anything special and is just enjoying life, traveling around. They continue to talk, and the night goes by with Lucy recording videos and sharing funny moments with Ben. It's clear that Ben likes Lucy, and she seems to be developing feelings for him as well. The next morning, Lucy wakes up to find Ben paragliding down the mountain. She tries to call him, but he has already left. She finds a note from Ben telling her to meet him at the bottom. Frustrated, Lucy starts driving the car alone through the treacherous mountainous terrain, and after much difficulty, she finally reaches Ben. Meanwhile, David is waiting for Lucy to return to the hotel. He checks with the van drivers, but they tell him that Lucy didn't return with them. Worried, David begins to wonder where Lucy could be. When Lucy finally reaches Ben, she angrily confronts him, accusing him of putting her in a difficult situation and making her late. They begin their journey back, with Ben driving. However, the mood sours when Lucy becomes irritated by the music Ben is playing in the car. In frustration, she takes the cassette out and throws it out of the window. Ben stops the car and goes back to retrieve it, but in doing so, the car's tires get stuck in the sand. Ben tries everything he can to free the car, but it only gets more deeply stuck. They have limited water, and they are surrounded by nothing but scorching heat and endless desert. Lucy, growing more desperate, asks if there is any other way out. Ben tells her there isn't, and the nearest road is 30 miles away. He suggests they wait until nightfall when the winds cool down before attempting to walk. However, Lucy, headstrong and determined, refuses to wait. Lucy refuses to listen to Ben's advice and leaves alone, armed with just a water bottle and her bag. Despite the scorching heat and the endless sand, she insists on making her way through the desert. However, after only an hour of walking, she realizes how harsh the environment is. With her water running out, Lucy reluctantly returns to Ben. Meanwhile, David is searching for Lucy everywhere. Frustrated by his lack of progress, he heads to the police station for help. However, the officer there dismisses his concern, explaining that kidnappings are common in the area and that they should be able to locate her by the evening. Infuriated, David bribes the officer, but this only backfires. The officer, insulted, orders David to leave immediately. Back in the desert, Lucy returns to Ben and starts drinking from his water bottle. But Ben stops her, explaining that they need to conserve their water supply as much as possible. Lucy acknowledges that Ben was right all along and agrees they should wait until nightfall to travel. Ben then pulls out a map from his pocket, revealing a shorter route that requires only a 12-mile trek instead of the daunting 30 miles they originally thought. As evening approaches, they prepare to set out on their journey. As they walk through the darkening desert, Lucy becomes increasingly exhausted and asks Ben to stop so she can rest. They stop briefly, but Ben insists they must move quickly because a storm is approaching. Before they can continue, a violent sandstorm hits, trapping them. The wind is so strong that it becomes impossible to move forward. Ben tries his best to push through, but Lucy struggles to keep up. Seeing her struggling, Ben grabs her and pulls her down, lying flat in the sand to shield themselves from the storm. Meanwhile, David gets a call informing him of Lucy's last known location. As morning breaks, Lucy and Ben awaken, buried under the sand from the storm. Lucy spots a car moving in the distance and frantically wakes Ben. Through their binoculars, they spot a road and both become overjoyed, seeing a chance to finally escape. Elated, Lucy jumps into Ben's arms, and they excitedly begin running toward the road, feeling hope for the first time in a long while. However, their hopes are dashed when they reach a massive ditch, too wide and deep to cross. Devastated, Lucy asks if they will ever make it home. Ben suggests they rest and reassess their situation before making any decisions. At the same time, David arrives at Lucy's last location and meets an old man who recognizes her from a photograph. The old man explains that Lucy and Ben had gone on a trip a few miles away. David offers the man money to take him to where Lucy might be, and the old man agrees, sending 2 men along with David. Meanwhile, Ben and Lucy are resting under a large rock. After a short break, Ben begins preparing a parachute to help them cross the ditch. Lucy, however, is hesitant, worried that they might fall mid-jump. She suggests they climb down into the ditch instead. Ben agrees, and together they begin their descent, marking the return to the scene we saw at the start of the story. As they carefully make their way down the steep slope, Lucy keeps slipping. Ben, attempting to help her, grabs her leg to steady her. Suddenly, Ben's own foot slips and he falls. Lucy also loses her balance, and both of them tumble down the slope. When the dust settles, Lucy is lying unconscious on one side of the slope, while Ben is hanging precariously by his hands. Lucy regains consciousness to hear Ben calling her name. She rushes to his side and, with great effort, pulls him to safety. However, Ben has sustained a deep injury, and a sharp rock is lodged in his wound. Meanwhile, David reaches the mountain where Lucy and Ben had been staying. There, he finds Lucy's camera and watches the videos she recorded, including clips of her and Ben together. Misunderstanding the situation, David becomes furious, believing that Lucy is now happily living with Ben. In a fit of jealousy, he orders his men to turn the car around. Back in the desert, Ben is growing weaker from his injury. Realizing he can no longer climb, he tells Lucy that she needs to go up alone and use the parachute to find help. Despite her fear, Lucy knows it's their only option. Determined, she climbs back up and makes several attempts to launch the parachute. Though she struggles at first, after a few tries she finally succeeds, taking flight over the vast desert. Lucy begins flying forward with the help of the parachute, and Ben watches her from below, thrilled to see her in the air. However, after flying a considerable distance, the strong winds start to disrupt her balance. Unable to control the parachute, Lucy crashes into a rock and falls hard. When she regains consciousness, she finds herself at the bottom of the slope, dazed and unsure of what to do next. Fortunately, she discovers a source of water nearby and drinks to her heart's content. While recovering, Lucy spots a young girl watching her nervously. She tries to communicate by showing the girl her phone and asks her where her parents are. The girl hesitates but eventually takes Lucy to her tribe. Once they reach the tribe, Lucy faints from exhaustion, and the tribal members come to her aid. Meanwhile, David, who had been sleeping in the car, is still en route back home. The 2 men traveling with him spot Ben's abandoned car along the way. Curious, they investigate the vehicle and discover valuable items inside. They begin scheming to make some quick money. Back at the tribe, Lucy persuades the tribal members to help her rescue Ben. With their assistance, she successfully saves Ben and brings him to the tribe. By nightfall, Ben regains consciousness and realizes that his injuries have been tended to and that Lucy is sitting beside him. The next morning, a tribal girl brings food for them, complimenting Lucy by holding her hand and calling her a brave and beautiful woman. However, the peaceful moment is short-lived as the two men who had found Ben's car arrive at the tribe's location, still on the hunt for Ben and Lucy. As Ben and Lucy prepare to leave, they spot the men on the road. The men wave them down and Ben and Lucy, thinking the men are there to help, get into their car. But unbeknownst to them, David has been knocked unconscious and hidden in the car's trunk by these men. During the drive, the men ask Ben where his car is. Ben explains that his car got stuck near the hill, so they had to abandon it. The men offer to drive them to the location so they can retrieve their vehicle. Ben and Lucy agree, but as soon as they arrive at the spot, the men suddenly pull out guns and order Ben and Lucy to kneel. It turns out the men are planning to make a deal and have called a buyer to the location. The buyer arrives and inspects Ben and David, revealing that the men had intended to sell both of them. The buyer kicks Ben's wound to weaken him, causing him to fall, and Lucy rushes to his side. The buyer then sets his sights on Lucy, lusting after her and offering more money to buy her as well. Lucy spits in his face. Furious, the buyer raises his gun to shoot her, but one of the men fires first, sparking a chaotic shootout. In the crossfire, most of the men are killed, but the buyer survives. He prepares to kill David when Ben, badly injured but still determined, manages to grab a gun and shoot the buyer dead. After the intense confrontation, Ben, David, and Lucy survive, though Ben is severely weakened by his wounds. In the aftermath, Ben suggests they let the air out of the car's tires to free it from the sand, which would allow them to drive away. David, frustrated, asks Ben why he didn't do this earlier if he knew it would work. Lucy, too, questions Ben's delay. Ben, with a soft smile, admits that he had known all along that deflating the tires would free the car, but he intentionally prolonged their time together to be with her longer. With that, Lucy lets the air out of the tires and the car is freed. The three survivors, Ben, Lucy, and David, get into the car and drive off, leaving the desert and their harrowing ordeal behind. The story ends as they head back, having survived an intense and life-changing experience. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.